and a tall, reedy-looking species with green-tinted skin and black double-pupilled eyes that had no whites. They seemed to move along the edges of the streets, never wading into the crush. "So, why did you mention the technology?" Shinigami asked. "Oh, now you're curious? You left me floating up here. I'm bored. There's only so much you could do down here." "There are a lot of things I could do. I have guided missiles. I have a flamethrower. I'm exceptionally maneuverable, even in an atmosphere." "You have a flamethrower?" There was a pause. "Shinigami, you have a flamethrower?" Barnabas kept his mental voice quiet and calm. He was very, very good at not losing his temper. He had, in fact, vowed never to lose his temper again. It was the only reason he allowed himself on-world anymore. "Maybe," the AI admitted. "I think Gene Dukes built it on a dare." Barnabas considered this. He was not sure whether he believed Shinigami, but, disturbingly, it did sound like the sort of thing the weapons people on the Meredith Reynolds would have done. "What do you mean, you think?" "Well, I heard them talking about installing something, and now I have a switch I could turn on to see what it does. In fact, let's try now." No. Barnabas actually waved a hand in the air, earning himself some odd looks. "No, let's not. We'll talk about this later." "Why later?" "Because right now," Barnabas told the AI with quiet satisfaction, "I'm gonna go get a drink." He had seen a lot of cities in his day, and one thing never changed. There was always somewhere to get a drink. Venfirdri Lan settled down on a stool at the bar and tried not to frown too obviously. Normally, he would not even think of coming to a place as grimy and run down as this, but he needed information, and a seedy bar was the surest place to get it. He winced when the bartender came into sight. She was an Ubuara. The sprays of white hair on her cheeks marked her as a female, and his sensitive eyes could pick up a faint brindled pattern in her sleek coat. The Ubuara were partially hive-minded. Each had their own thoughts, and yet absorbed some of their group's thoughts in a very particular way. They could pass information to one another without speaking, and not simply words, but also emotions and images. They had been observed absorbing each other's thoughts and making those thoughts their own, although they had also been known to act individually. Only the Ubuara seemed to understand when either thing, group integration or independent action, might happen. There was an Ubuara language, half hand signals and half words, but it was rarely used, at least not out loud. They tended to speak to each other mentally and learn the local language wherever they ended up in their travels. Gar did not like Ubuara. No business owner in their right mind did, especially not an overseer of Devon's mining industry. You could cut off their connection to the rest with a simple implant that transmitted a blocking signal, and of course, the cost of the implant was added to the worker's contract, to be paid off with a few extra months of work. But maintaining the transmitters was simply one more thing to do, and the Ubuara tended to overreact when they were cut off from the rest of the group. It was just for a year. You would think they would understand. It was a business owner's nightmare, and Gar had long been of the opinion that Ubuara weren't worth the trouble. He wasn't in charge of staffing, though, and given that they tended to start insurrections if you didn't cut them off from one another, they had to be dealt with somehow. The Ubuara swung over to him using a series of holds on the ceiling and tilted her head toward him. "May I get you a drink, sir?" Fruit juice, whatever you have." Gar hesitated only a moment before adding, "Please." "At once, sir." She swung away, seeming pleased by the order. He had chosen it with care. The Ubuara enjoyed fruit juice, and he wanted her to think well of him. He didn't want every free Ubuara on the street to know who he was and keep him from getting the information he needed. Namely, what was that damned ship that had...